Our parents' doctors were like, steak a day. Oh, the serotonin stuff. I don't even know what it is. Don't worry about it.
Welcome to Self-Conscious, a YouTube channel dedicated to consciousness and the neuroscience of what makes us us.
Okay, so you know what I was thinking? We should get a poll going to drive up engagement for a channel that we don't even know the name to. If it should be Skeptic Tank or the Default Mode Network.
Yeah.
What do you think, YouTube?
Yeah. I want to apologize for this ugly ass tarp that I had to hang up with duct tape. On the other side of it, there's a lot of like crap from my landlord. She's great, but the house is full of a lot of her dad's stuff.
There's literally some cat puke right there.
That's mine.
Oh, never mind.
That's ours. That's ours. Yeah. And behind Jimmy, you can't see. Oh, this is Jimmy, by the way. This is Jimmy.
Yeah, how's it going?
Behind Jimmy, there are a bunch of cardboard boxes. I've cropped them out so you can't see them.
The art of editing.
Yeah. So yeah. Today we're gonna talk about serotonin, right?
Yes. Serotonin.
What is serotonin?
What is serotonin? Serotonin or 5-HT.
No. Like, what is it? What is serotonin?
It's a monoamine neurotransmitter.
5-hydroxy.
5-HT because 5-hydroxytryptamine. It's a monoamine neurotransmitter that modulates mood, appetite, consciousness, GI activity, vomiting, vasoconstriction, yet it is incredibly toxic to the CNS, thus 90% of it is found in the cells lining your gastrointestinal tract.
Boom, done. Ship it. Episode's over. Episode's over.
Now you know. Now you know what serotonin is.
So I actually didn't know that serotonin had a name before serotonin. Its original name,
5-HT,
when it was discovered. That's the molecular
name. The chemical.
Name.
Not the IUPAC name, just the common chemical name.
It was named something prior to serotonin.
Really?
And the only reason they landed on serotonin is because that was the name that the drug company, I forget the name, John something. The company decided to name it that, so that's just the popular name that took off. The original name was actually enteramine. ENTER something.
Oh, the enteric nervous system, yeah.
Oh, right. The enteric nervous system, right? Because what was it, 90%?
90% of it is
all serotonin
gastrointestinal tract,
yeah.
It
was discovered first in the reason it was named enteramine. I actually don't know the name, why they picked that. Probably something to do with the gut.
Enteric something would be my guess.
But I think it was actually dissolved, or distilled out of blood, out of rabbit blood. Like, it was all the rage in the 30s to figure out what the hell was going on with high blood pressure, hypertension.
That's another hypertension. Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah.
And before they could get to actually doing the work on the molecules they wanted to do the work on, there was this pesky
serotonin
chemical that kept, like, when the blood would coagulate, it would just fuck up all their samples.
Vasoconstriction, yeah.
And I
guess that's what led to its discovery, was in rat blood.
Were extracting rabbit blood. Yeah,
rabbit blood.
And they would go, I forget I should know all these scientists' names. In fact, I could Google them.
That's fine. Dude, I've done like an hour and a half of research.
Yeah. But so he would go to a slaughterhouse and get 15 buckets of rabbit blood.
Just blood.
Just pure rabbit blood. Stick it all into a giant garbage can lined with cheesecloth. And filter it all out till it was just serum. What would your food be called? Serum.
Yeah.
As the blood coagulated, the resultant serum dripped through the cheesecloth and out of the hole. After 2 days in the cold room, 15 liters of serum were collected. More than 60 runs of the slaughterhouse were necessary to generate enough starting material.
My God.
Then this part, I feel like you're gonna get a kick out of.
That does not sound like fun collecting that.
Fucking rabbit blood and dumping it into a garbage can. Through a 5-step. Okay, so then to generate enough starting material. So now we have the starting material. Then through a 5-step procedure, starting with ethanol precipitation of proteins, followed by acetone precipitation of salts, chloroform extraction of inactive substances, and butanol extraction of the active substance, and finally dilituric acid preparation. A very small amount of the vasoconstricting substance was isolated, originally named enteramine. And there's an actual picture of the
molecule.
Of the
enteramine.
of the sample, the original sample that was extracted, I think, by Dr. Erspemer. These names, I know that it matters, and these people are important, and I feel terrible that I don't
It's fine.
have them all
I don't know
memorized,
anybody's name.
I'm
Well,
not gonna say
talking about psychedelic drugs. I was going to bring up Albert Hoffman and Alexander Shulgin. Those are two notable, dudes in their field. But
what does serotonin do, and why does it matter? How do psychedelics relate to serotonin?
because they bind to the same receptors that serotonin does, specifically 5-HT2A.
People didn't think at first that there was serotonin in the brain.
They
didn't believe it.
It's kind of funny to think that our parents' doctors...
Or that it even mattered.
Our parents' doctors were like, steak a day. Oh, the serotonin stuff. I don't even know what it is. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. It was a vasoconstrictor, number one, and it would cause muscles to...
hypertension.
It played a role. Hypertension is smooth muscle contraction in your arteries and in your veins, right? The arteries and the veins get too tight, which increases the pressure of the blood overall. And that's all autonomic. That's all part of the autonomic nervous system.
That's what you're saying.
And particularly hypertension and those kinds of like fight or flight responses, that kind of stuff is all part of the sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, fight or flight. As opposed to parasympathetic, which is rest and digest.
Right. But serotonin actually does more signaling with the parasympathetic nervous system and acts to release what's called catch. This is the first time it was actually discovered as having a function. Catch in mollusks is when they, like clams, how they and like mussels and stuff clamp onto the wall of boats or concrete or whatever, and they sit there and they filter feed.
Okay.
Well, a lot of research, and we're talking like the 30s. Enteramine was originally discovered
before they knew that it was in your 30s. Brain. Before, just the gastrointestinal tract.
That before I think the one of the neurotransmitters that was all the rage at the time was norepinephrine. That had been discovered along with one other. I can't.
That's the thing that gives you butterflies in your stomach.
Norepinephrine has to do with the sympathetic nervous system.
Rest and digest.
That's fight or flight, not rest and digest. The opposite, sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic is the rest and digest,
which is norepinephrine, right?
And I think acetylcholine is the main neurotransmitter in the parasympathetic nervous system.
Because norepinephrine is epinephrine, except you've yeeted a methyl group. Wait, no. Nor means you've yeeted an alkyl group. Yeah.
You said yeeted?
Yeeted. Yeah. It yeets a methyl group from the amine. So it goes from a secondary amine to a primary to a primary amine. So norepinephrine looks a lot like adrenaline.
Sure.
It is adrenaline minus a methyl group.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, because fight or flight.
And epinephrine, norepinephrine is made from dopamine.
Huh.
I forgot what you have to do to that. I think it has something to do with the beta carbon. Serotonin secreted from the enterochromaffin cells eventually finds its way out of tissues into the blood. So enterochromaffin cells.
Right, 90%'s in the gut.
Yeah.
But really quick on these muscles. So
gut.
catch, they would be locked on, and then it wasn't clear what would cause them to detach when they would detach. Turns out.
These muscles?
It was, I forget the woman who did the study, but she was able to pinpoint the molecule that did it. It was identical to enteramine. So it was serotonin.
That made them relax.
That made them relax and detach. And also, just as a little more of the nail in the coffin in the role of serotonin in hypertension, taking people with really high blood pressure and comparing urine samples for levels of serotonin with normal subjects showed no difference. So serotonin the only reason anyone cared about this back then was because high blood pressure was all the rage. Why are people dying of heart attacks? What is high blood pressure?
Yeah.
What causes? That's all they cared about.
Yeah.
So basically, okay, well, that's not hypertension, so we're going to move on. Till this one guy, Dr. D.W. Woolley, said, wait a second. We still have this smooth muscle contraction in the autonomic nervous system, the automatic nervous system, in the smooth muscles. What's going on here? And more importantly, why is it that when I have, I think it was some sort of ovarian cells, why is it that serotonin causes contraction of these smooth muscles normally, but if I squirt LSD on these ovarian cells and then treat them with serotonin, they don't contract anymore? Because LSD
binds to these
is
receptors.
binding there
in
first.
Ovarian? So it's not even in
blocking.
the brain?
Well, the issue, the reason this matters is because he already knew LSD very active, does fucking something in our brains.
So
right?
wait. So this is after. This has to be after 1943. Everything has to be after 1943. After Albert Hoffman acted.
1963.
After 20 years after Hoffman accidentally ingested 200 micrograms of LSD.
Right.
Lysergic acid diethylamine 25 because it's the 25th iteration in a series of ergoline derivatives conducted by a Swiss chemist named Albert Hoffman.
Nice.
But we'll get so they're using LSD on receptors that are not just in the brain for research for
think about it. Like we said, only 1 to 2%
ergolines
of serotonin in our body. Only 1 to 2% in our brain. The rest is doing important shit elsewhere.
Yep.
Which leads me to those band-aids, right? 90% in our gut, 1 to 2% in our brain.
Yes.
The other 8% is in platelets.
Oh, really?
Which could explain why the blood was coagulating and why serotonin was leading to that. I don't know about that, but I do know that serotonin is also a mild growth factor. It's on platelets, they clump together, and with the mild growth factor could all contribute to healing, I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was pretty interesting.
It's multifaceted. It has many different applications in the body.
And the other thing, just because 90% is in the gut doesn't mean that has any influence on the brain. Because serotonin can't cross the blood-brain barrier. So the serotonin that's in your gut stays in your gut. It has nothing to do with your brain.
So how do you make it bind to 5-HT2A receptors?
No. The 1 to 2% that's in your brain doesn't get there from your gut. The RAF nuclei in your brainstem.
They said RAF nuclei.
Yeah, produce it. It actually produced there.
Because I think I heard something about the vagus nerve is connected in there somewhere. I heard that it might bring dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine. The big three things, and acetylcholine and GABA and glutamate, are all produced by the vast majority of them are produced by microbes in your gut.
But not even dopamine can cross the blood-brain barrier.
So that's produced by
of where they're produced.
Oh, so it has to be produced from within your body. Right. The substantia nigra.
Right. And Parkinson's, if you have the death of those cells,
it dissipates and you get
But that's
Parkinson's.
dopamine. We're going to cover dopamine.
So then you take L-dopa.
Let's focus on serotonin.
Quiero L-dopa.
Right. Let's focus on serotonin. So all of this shit going on with the coagulation, and also there's like 90% of it's in your gut.
I should have brought Teakle.
But this guy, he's like, wait a second. LSD is super active in our brains, and LSD blocks the action. So there's more to this. Serotonin must have something to do with mental illness. It must.
It plays into it.
Right. And this
led to like these guys like kind of figuring out, putting together the pieces.
Why? The pieces are still not put together.
No.
I have no fucking idea what serotonin is actually doing.
We're a bit further ahead than our parents' doctors.
The review that from a couple weeks ago said serotonin does not cause depression, which I don't think anyone actually thought it caused depression.
No, it's just a lack of it as a symptom of depression.
Right. The interesting point is that artificially lowering it in normal people doesn't cause them to be depressed.
No.
Right. And so back to that Dutch family. I should definitely look up that study because it was crazy interesting, and I don't remember the name of it. But long story short, they had too much serotonin. Way too much serotonin.
Okay.
And they weren't
schizophrenic?
Aggressive. They were fucked up. There was something wrong with these guys. Clearly wrong with these guys. Hyper aggressive. Have you heard of that one guy getting off? Some murderer. Who cares what his name was? He got a lessened sentence because he had a similar variant, the lower activity variant of what this Dutch family had. And the media took this idea of an aggressive gene and ran with it, called it the warrior gene.
I was going to say something. MAOA, monoamine oxidase A, one of the enzymes that we mentioned earlier. On all the autopsies that every single serial killer they performed an autopsy on, they found some kind of weird mutation with this MAOA gene.
Okay.
I learned that from Pinterest.
Yeah. I mean, it's not surprising because it can cause.
It regulates, and monoamine
something.
MAO is responsible for metabolizing any monoamine. So all the neurotransmitters are basically metabolized by like these class of enzymes.
Yeah. I guess the problem that I'm having, and I think the confusing part of this is that whether you have low levels or high levels, something is wrong, right? It's not like if you have too much, there's a problem, yada yada. And if there's too little, it's more than that. Lower levels are associated with depression still, no matter what.
Yeah.
But they don't cause depression. And higher levels, people with this low activity version of the warrior gene, which again is bullshit. And a side note about this family, not only did they have higher levels of aggression, they were also just kind of antisocial in general.
So
to the point where some of them would just drop their pants and just like be exhibitionists and like wave their dicks around.
It sounds like this aggression is epigenetic and genetic.
Right.
Where they got a little bit of lineage and it's their own personal lifestyle. Was there drugs involved? Were they alcoholics or like?
Except in the case of the Dutch family,
were they just crazy?
They were missing the gene altogether.
They just didn't have it.
That led to the reuptake, which led to a fuck ton more serotonin than usual. Yeah, they were the ones. Yeah. So as
there's no reuptake. So whatever one synapse spat out, it would just absorb all of it.
They had way too much serotonin.
It would never. It was not. It's supposed to be a two-way street. It's called reuptake.
Right.
Whatever isn't needed gets sucked back into the presynaptic synapse.
But so the low activity version of the gene is what people were calling the warrior gene, and that's why that guy got off with a lesser sentence for murder, because he had this gene mutation.
Because he could blame it on his genes for his behavior.
Right, but it's not that simple in depression, and it's also not that simple in this idea of there being a warrior gene, because even people who have that same low activity version of the MAOI gene don't have higher levels of aggression, unless they also had traumatic childhoods. And
every serial killer
issues and abuse in their childhood.
Every serial killer generally has both. Like an abusive.
It's exactly, yeah. It's both.
Nature and nurture.
Right.
A little bit of both.
Right. They're both equally important.
It's like genetics sets the stage, and then your environment kind of plays out how that package unfolds. What was it? Take the methylate the hydroxyl group, and slap on a acetyl group, and you got melatonin.
Oh yeah,
which is associated with sleeping. It's like 10 times stronger.
Its name, serotonin. Its real name, its second name, sero, blood, tonin, muscle contraction.
Oh, that's the etymology behind it. I wonder what melatonin is.
It probably contributed to some sort of smooth muscle contraction if it's got tonin in the name.
Probably. That's so weird, because that was the one that fascinated Sasha, Alexander Shulgin, a Russian chemist who created the first ever biodegradable insecticide called mexicarbate, marketed as Zectran. Dow Chemical liked it because it was the first ever biodegradable insecticide, so they gave him a fortune. And with that fortune, he went and created an analytical laboratory that he used to create hundreds of new psychedelic compounds that he'd shove up his and his wife's own ass, and then they'd go have sex. Should we add to that part? Great man. He's the one who brought back MDMA.
I'm sorry, what was he shoving up his ass?
Well, he would take LSD and modify it slightly into something like L-Lad or F-Lad, and then because he had no clue what the active dose was, he had no clue what the deadly dose was, so he'd start with thousands. Well, no, the tryptamines he'd do orally, because you smoke DMT. But the phenethylamines, means he'd keister.
So how does this relate to serotonin? I may have missed the link here. Does DMT affect serotonin levels? Does it bind to the same receptor?
Yeah.
DMT does.
DMT.
Holy shit, DMT.
Yeah.
Wow.
DMT is a drug you produce naturally with your pineal gland and your lungs when you sleep. So I don't know if that's involved with dreams or how. We were talking about. Melatonin makes you go to sleep, and then your brain produces
regulates,
as a byproduct.
Appetite, sleep-wake cycles.
Yeah. I make fun of enterocolitis in my book. That's something a little bit different.
Oh, he's pitching the book.
If the name, you got a link. Yeah, buy my book, by the way.
If the name is nowhere near done.
If the name, I'm just saying this.
Buy my draft one. It's 4 pages long.
But if the name Andrew Wakefield comes up, consider it sus.
Okay. Noted. Duly noted. What all I care about, and I'm sure all you really care about, is what it's doing in the brain. It's producing the RAF nuclei.
Like
where do those projections shoot out?
How does that equal like consciousness and
serotonin doesn't equal consciousness.
It modulates.
Play a role.
It plays a role.
And that's the other thing. I couldn't find any studies where. What about people who had no serotonin at all? That must be fatal, right?
Is that even a thing?
It must be fatal. No, I couldn't find anything, so probably not. I don't know. Closest thing I could find.
They probably didn't have any control groups because all of the control died.
Right, there weren't any. No, exactly. Yeah. So it's doing something really important. It's just like this kind of thing I've never been interested in because it's easy to tell what different brain regions do. And if you need them to live.
One thing I hate about like this is that I was like looking up stuff and I was finding stuff that like directly contradicted everything because it's real complicated.
That's what I was saying.
Overactivity,
high levels or low levels, both.
Overactivity of the serotonin system may relate to mood disorders such as anxiety and depression.
Right.
But low
levels are more correlated with depression. High levels are more correlated with aggression, which I think has to do with fear, and I think that's pretty solidly backed
when the sympathetic nervous system is overworked like that.
Right. But the important part is both lead to impulsivity. And
that's another thing it said, impulse control. Yeah.
Whether it's high or whether it's low.
Hang on.
Which means, and also like serotonin has a lot to do with facilitating reward, like dopamine. They're very similar.
Hallucinogens disrupt pre-pulse in rats, an effect typically mediated in 5-HT2A activation.
What's pre-pulse and what do you mean hallucinogens? Is serotonin considered a hallucinogen?
Serotonin, no. This was on a study about psychedelic drugs and how I think it was 5-MeO DMT. I don't know. So whatever. So yeah, about impulse control. That's something you mentioned.
The brainstem. Okay, well, just real quick on the
sorry to detract.
on the anatomical stuff. It's easier for me to understand or kind of like think my way through which parts of the brain do what, because we have all these studies.
I just get lost instantly as far as that goes.
Well, we have
pre-pulse
studies.
Inhibition.
We have studies where let's say you lose one part of your visual cortex. Well, then you go blind. So that part clearly did something to do with vision.
Oh yeah.
Like speech centers.
Brodmann's area 44 and 45,
But you don't you can't get shot in the head and it happens to take out all your serotonin, right? It just doesn't work like that.
No, it's distributed throughout.
Which is why it's harder to really understand what it does. And I think it's important.
Because it works on so many receptors that aren't, not all of which are even in the brain.
Oh yeah. Well,
wait a minute.
We did just mention like lower levels, artificially lowering. So you can't get rid of it completely. No. It sounds like, but artificially lowering it doesn't cause depression in normal healthy
depressive
people.
Symptoms.
It has to go hand in hand with adverse events in your childhood or
your formative years. Because doesn't that do something also to like the amygdala? Hypothalamus, it like shrinks it or some shit, or makes it more enlarged. The part that's because it's associated with like negative memories and just like negative emotions and shit. You're just more attuned to it.
One of the main projections of the RAF nuclei is to the amygdala.
Oh no way! It's a delicate balance. Don't hit your kids, assholes.
Seriously.
And it's kind of funny because so two things among many. Our parents. Child abuse was not a term that anybody knew, or it wasn't even a thing, and they didn't know that serotonin was even in the brain.
Right. So at the end of the day, what can we say about serotonin? Like definitively. It does
that it has
something.
It's a hydroxylated tryptamine.
Yeah, that's about it. That's about it. Honestly.
I wanted to talk about the chemistry, but I can't draw it out and be like, yeah, this phenyl group has a bicyclo bond to this 2-pyrroline, and then on the third position you got a thanamine. And then it's a primary amine at the end of that. And then you hydroxylate the 5th position. I'll draw that out, and then we can like put in post.
You and Dr. Woolley would get along. He was completely blind, but he claims that it is often said that Dr. Woolley saw the structure of serotonin in LSD and realized that LSD could be used as an anti-metabolite tool to uncover the role of serotonin in mental illness. This guy died at 53. Oh, okay. Real quick, I got to pitch his book, The Biochemical Basis for Psychosis, or the Serotonin Hypothesis About Mental Illness, Woolley, 1963. He died
I want to read that.
As a blind man mountain climbing in the Andes, trying to construct
I heard about that.
a visual impression of the culture of the Incas. He was 52 years old, only 3 years after he published his book.
That was the guy that they had the chapter on the dueling neurosurgeons.
Was he in that book?
I think so. A blind guy who he literally traveled the globe.
No way.
Completely blind.
Yeah.
He had, I forgot how he did it. I think it was all by touch or some shit. I need to read that chapter.
Right. Well, he was the first person to push for chemicals. Like, there was no such thing as neurochemistry back then. No such thing.
Like your brain doesn't use chemicals?
I don't understand what they thought was going on, but probably something along those lines.
I'm kind of interested. It's probably something outlandishly stupid that people probably still believe today.
When cerebral... This is from Dr. Page's book, Irving Page's book. I think it was about Dr. Twarog. But when cerebral metabolism or brain chemistry was being established as a field worthy of study, serotonin played an extraordinary role. It will come as a surprise to younger readers that even as late as 1937, many scientists were dubious as to whether neurochemistry was indeed a discipline. If I had to select a single effect resulting from the discovery of serotonin, I would unhesitatingly suggest its influence in shaping investigators' ideas on cerebral activity. And it sounds like serotonin was discovered before dopamine. I gotta look that up.
I want to name this episode "Top 10 Monoamine Neurotransmitters" and just sit here for three solid.
We can have a tier list.
3 solid.
That's fine. Let's have a fucking tier list for Dopamine as an independent neurotransmitter in the nervous system was discovered in 1957. So serotonin was probably it wasn't the first.
Wait a minute. It was discovered in the brain.
1957.
So people were tripping out on acid before they
even knew what dopamine was.
That serotonin.
Dopamine was discovered.
I thought serotonin
or interamine was discovered in the 30s. Remember?
Oh yeah, with the rat thing, yeah.
Because the blood,
the rabbit
blood, right? Because it kept getting in the way.
Yeah,
and they wanted to filter it out. Like, get this shit out of here. Let's name it interamine and move on. Didn't think it was important at all.
It probably plays no role in the way that the cerebral cortex develops or anything like that.
Until that guy came along, he's like, okay, no, LSD is acting on the same parts of the brain, and LSD has a profound effect on consciousness. So serotonin must have something, must be playing some sort of important role.
Not to detract, LSD is aberrant among the psychedelics in that it also affects dopamine directly. It's a D2 agonist.
Interesting.
Whereas shit like psilocybin affects dopamine, but it's like downstream effects.
And now we've got clear links between depression, when you have low levels, combined with adverse life events, because low serotonin alone does not cause depression. And on the other side of the coin, higher levels of serotonin in the brain lead to aggression, but only when coupled with prior traumatic, early childhood
abusive
events. Right.
During their formative years.
So it's just, I don't know. There's really not that much you can say besides it's important. We're not exactly sure what it's doing. And, yeah.
And all you need to do is, what was it? Take the methylate the hydroxyl group and slap on a little ketone, acetyl group, and you got melatonin.
Oh yeah,
which is associated with sleeping. It's like 10 times stronger.
Its name, serotonin. Its real name, its second name, sero, blood, tonin, muscle contraction. That's where it comes from. Blood contraction. Serotonin.
That's the etymology behind it. I wonder what melatonin is.
It probably contributed to some sort of smooth muscle contraction if it's got tonin in the name.
Probably.
Well, that wraps up the episode. If you like what we're doing, let us know. And also, let us know what you think we should do next. I'll catch you next time.